Okay, Masechet Pesachim, Daf Pechet. We were right in the just almost at the end of the Agadah. Agadah was praising the benefits of being in Galut, which is quite amazing and surprising. It's good for protection, not to all be in one place when enemies come, and also to be able to spread Judaism through other nations and all that. So the theme of the Agadah was always to look at the bright side, like Hosea should not see the people as so negative. And so too, we should, whenever we assess a group of people or our own situation, to see the good that comes from it. But now we're going to shift and say, unless you think that Galut is too good, right? We had a transition story here where Ula thinks that the dates of Bavel are so delicious, and so they help his learning, but then he realizes that it gives him a stomach ache, so he's amazed that the Babylonians can even learn as much as they do. So now we're going to praise Geula. ואמר רבי אלעזר, מה דכתיב הלכו עמים רבים ועמדו לכו ונעלה אל הר אדוני אל בית אלוהי יעקב. אלוהי יעקב ולא אלוהי אברהם וישחק. Okay, so we wait for a day in which all nations of the world will come and say, let us go to the mountain of God, to the house of the God of Jacob. Why does it say only the God of Jacob? How come Abraham and Yitzhak? אלא לא כאברהם שכתוב בו הר, שנאמר, אשר יאמר Hayom behad Adonai yeda'eh. Abraham had a different relationship with that place. This is where the Akedat Yitzhak is understood to be also on Har HaBayit, and yet for Abraham it's just a mountain. It's not yet a place of a Bet HaMikdash. So we don't want to come to just an empty mountain. This is also understood when Yitzhak goes out to meditate in the field. We understand that that's also Har HaBayit, but for him it was just an empty field. We don't want in the future to come back to an empty field. When the place where Yaakov sleeps is also associated with Har HaBayit, and he calls it house, the house of God. So yes, that's what we want to come back to, Yaakov's vision of it being a house. אמר רבי יוחנן, גדול כיבוס גלויות כיום שנבראו בו שמיים וארץ, שנאמר ונכבסו בני יהודה בני ישראל יחדיו, ושמו להם ראש אחד ועלו מן הארץ, כי גדול יום יזרעאל, וכתיב ויהי ערב ויהי בוקר יום אחד. The day of the ingathering of the Jews from all the exiles is going to be as great as the day that God created heavens and earth, because this pasuk, back to Hosea, which we started this whole Agadah with, says that the day, great will be the day, Yom Yisrael. Israel also was the name of his first son, and the reference to the first curse to the dynasty of the north. But here it's turned into a positive. That's the day when of ingathering of exiles is called a great day, parallel to the day of creation. Something is going to be like, a time of great darkness and chaos and tohu vabohu, and from that will come something amazing and wonderful. So that's a beautiful way to end that Agadah. A lot of depth and amazing structure and content in this Agadah. It was worthy of studying for several hours more, but I'm glad we got to see the overall ideas. And now we get back to the Mishnah, which said, Yatom sheshachatu alav apotropesin. So if you have an orphan who has multiple guardians that are taking care of him, and each of the guardians has him in mind that the Yatom can join their Korban Pesach. The halacha in that case is the Yatom can choose whichever one he wishes to join. So we ask, Shemat mina yesh berera, just like we asked yesterday. So does this imply that, we asked yesterday regarding a wife, now we say, does this also similarly imply that there is retroactive designation? Look at how the Yatom can decide later on during the night which one he wanted to be with. But during the time of Shechita, he could only have decided, he had to decide before Shechita to say, I'm going to be with this one or with that one. So does that mean he's allowed to retroactively designate? Sometimes we do say Berera, but we really only say it in regarding to matters that are Dirabanan. like Techum Shabbat. I want to put two eruvet techumin, one to the east, one to the one to the west. I'll decide tomorrow which way I want to go. But in general, in Doraita laws, we do not say berera, and it's a huge controversy. So, what about the opinion that says we do not apply berera? How would they explain this case? Amar bizera se labait mikol makom. Since it says you have to take one lamb for each father's house, for each household. First of all, it's talking about double language. It might be included, more inclusive. But furthermore, those of the household are automatically included. In other words, the child does not have to say, "Hey, Dad, could you please include me?" Right? A young child is automatically registered. Similarly, an orphan is automatically registered. He doesn't have to decide. So therefore, in this case, since the orphan doesn't actually have to do anything to opt in, he automatically opts into both. All he has to do is actually nullify one of the groups that he already is part of. So the nullification that can be done afterwards, after the shechita later on at night. So this is not a case of retroactive designation, which an adult would have to do, but a child can just nullify the one they didn't want after the fact. And we're going to have a proof for this from a braita. Tanu Rabbanan, se labait melamed she'adam mebish v'shochet al yedei beno b'toach ketanim v'yedei abdo v'shivchato kena'anim ben mida'atan ben shelo mida'atan. Right. So when you have one sefer, the household that teaches that you can bring and do shechita for the son, daughter who are minors, or for eved and shivcha kena'ani. They are also the property of the owner, and therefore he can decide for them that they will join him, whether they know it with their consent or even without their consent. They automatically join. Right? It's the father's responsibility, and he has the authority to do so. However, father does not automatically do shechita for his adult son and daughter. They have to say, "Hey, can we join you?" Or his Jewish slave or maid servant. They have a level of independence more than a Eved Kanani. Also, his wife can. All those you need the consent, their consent to say, "Yes, we want to be part of yours." And so that's why, in the case of the wife, she has to decide one way or another, and we don't say, she can't decide later. But regarding the child, that's why a child can decide later, because he automatically, even without his knowledge, is designated in both of the guardians. Tanya idach. Okay, we had one baraita. We're going to have another similar baraita, but it adds a little bit. It switches the order also. So the second case first. Lo yishchot adam lo al yedei beno b'to gedulim. A man cannot assume that his adult children will be part of his korban pesach, ve'al yedei abdo v'shivchato abrim, and his Jewish man and maidservant. V'yedei ishto ela mida'atan, and his wife, unless he has their consent, they have to agree to it. But he can do shechita on behalf of and include his minor children, his non-Jewish servants, whether with their consent or without. Okay, so far that's all exactly the same. And all these cases, what they mean, all the cases meaning the second part of it, right, of the children, if they did their own shechita, right? They went and joined some other group, but they did it themselves. And their master also did shechita for them. They only go with the master. In other words, they do not have the right even to separate. They are not independent. And they cannot fulfill the mitzvah with their own korban. Except chutz min is the end of the braita. Chutz min aisha sheyechola limchot. Except for the wife, because she can protest. In general, a wife has a high level of independence. If a wife says, "I don't want you to, I don't want you to feed me," which is he has the obligation to feed her under the ketubah, but she can say, "Listen, I want to keep all my earnings from whatever I work, and I want to feed myself. I want to be financially independent." That's her right. to do so. So similarly, she can say that she does not want to be part of the husband's Korban Pesach, and she can go out and do her own. So she can, but none of the others on the list can. Now we wonder, like Isha is one of the first ones. She's not quite like the child. What about the other, like the adult children? They're also financially dependent. They can't do their own. Ma'ishana Isha. What's the difference between Isha and adult children? Amarava Isha v'chol dedamela. You're right. When he says Isha, it means all the people in the first group, the wife and those that are like her, including the Hebrew slave and the adult children. They can all do their own. All right, so that's the second baraita that says is similar to the first baraita. But now we're going to wonder, what about a default case? If a wife says, yes, I want to be part of it, of course she is. If she says, I don't want to be part of it, then she's not. But what if she doesn't say anything? Can we assume that she would be? Ha gufa kashya. Well, from this, like 3 clauses in this second baraita that relate to this, right? It says here, ela mida'atan, and then over here it says, if they did their own shechita, it's not good, except for Isha, because she can yechola limchot. So we're going to try to derive from these 3 clauses what the law would be if she didn't say anything. Amart, you said in the beginning, chutz min ha'isha shechola limchot. Except for, that's actually at the end, right? The last thing, except for a wife, she can protest. Oh, so that means if she actually actively protests, she will not be part of her husband's Korban Pesach. But that's because she protested. But if she did not protest, if she said nothing, then she is included with her husband. Okay, so not a standard case, she is included. But the beginning says he does not force his wife to do it except with her consent. That sounds like she has to have active consent. But if she says nothing, hasatama lanafka, then she is not included. So we have a contradiction. We try to resolve the contradiction. My elamidatan. When we say only with their consent, lavdamrein ela bistama. It doesn't mean necessarily that she says yes, actively I have to be. But even if she says nothing, that's implied consent, and that's good enough. We mean consent as opposed to if she actively says no. Okay, so we can interpret that Esha to be consistent with the Sefa. However, within the Sefa, we still have a bit of a glitch. The case at the end is if they do shechita on themselves, and the master also did it. So this is a case of where she did. This is like an indeterminate case. She didn't say anything. She didn't say she didn't want. She did not want to be. And it says except for the wife, she follows her own korban, not the husband's, right? Because she can protest, but she didn't actually protest. And so you see, from these words, if she does not actually protest, she follows her own korban and not that of the husband. So that contradicts the conclusion we just said. So what do we do with this? Amarava kevan sheshachatu and look at this case. This is a case where she made her own korban pesach. There's no greater protesting than that. Well, it's even more stronger than if she says, "I don't want to be with your korban." Well, she have to write a letter. She actually went and did her own korban pesach. So that is the same as saying, even more than saying, "I don't want to be with you." Okay, so that now we resolved everything, right? Basically, we have 3 categories of people. Of the wife here, where if she says nothing, she joins her husband, or if she says yes. If she says no, then she does not join her husband. Whereas children and Canaanite slaves, they are part of the father or master, no matter what they do, right? They cannot protest. And other people, right, other adults would have to actively say, yes, I want to be part of your group. There's no implied agreement for other people. Okay, good. So now we get to the next section, of Ebed shel Shnei Shutafin. It's a case that looks like the Apotropin, but is not the same. So we have a slave that's owned by two people. And we said the halacha there is that he cannot eat from either this master or that master, presumably because neither master wants to include the other half of the slave that isn't his. But we have a contradiction. We have another Mishnah that says, they're owned by two people, the slave cannot eat either. That's our Mishnah. We have a baraita that says that a slave owned by two different people can eat from either one. He can choose. In other words, like the same as an orphan. So that's the opposite. So what do we do with this? That was a question that Rav Aina asked to Rav Nachman, who responds, Amar le, Aina Saba, Aina the elder, right? You're a great wise man. You've been around for a long time. We can figure out this answer. Or others say, Amrila, Patya Ukama. He called them black pot. Black pot means a pot that you've used so many times, it's all burnt and grimy, but in a positive way. It has wisdom, it has experience. So you're a great Torah scholar. Mini uminach tistayim shematata. Between the two of us, we can figure out what this means. In other words, you brought up a good question, and actually, this will be helpful. This will give us a clue to understanding the Mishnah even better. Matnitin bid kapdi ahadadeh. Baraita de la kapdi ahadadeh. The Mishnah is talking about a case where the two owners are exacting or particular with one another. Neither of them wants to be able to share, right? One says, I don't want to give Korban Pesach to your half. The other one says, I want to give it to your half. So since they are stingy and they're fighting, the Eved is left with nothing. He can't do either. But the Braita is talking about a case where the two owners, half owners, get along nicely and they're happy. Okay, you want to do it? I'll do it. I could do it. You could do it. Whatever you want. And in that case, both of them are happy to sponsor the Eved. And so in that case, he can choose whichever he wants, similar to the orphan guardians. Good. Next part of Mishnah, Mishech Esyo Eved V'Chesyo Ben Horin. Right. The only thing worse than being a slave owned by two people is being half a slave and half free. So that person, Lo Yochal Mishel Rabo, he cannot eat from his masters because he's half slave, and you can't assume that his master was including him, the free half of him. So Mishel Rabohu de Lo Yochal. So this implies that he cannot eat his masters, but he can go and do his own. But we have a baraita that says he cannot eat not from his or not from his baraita. So now again, a similar contradiction here. Which one is it? One of these follows an early teaching of Hillel, and the second follows a later teaching of Hillel. What are we talking about? Mishnah describes the history of this law. Right, you have a case like this. A slave is shared by two people. One of the people frees him. So now what's he going to do? How could you be half a slave? So Hillel has a solution for him. He'll work for his master one day, and every other day, and he'll work for himself every other day. And that's how he can live. Bet Shammai omerim, tekantem et rabo, bet asmo lo tekantem. All right, you helped out the master, but you didn't help the slave himself. Who's he going to marry? He can't marry another shivcha because he's half free, and a free person can't marry shivcha. He can marry a free person? No, because an Eved can't marry a free person. Yibatel, should he never get married? The world was created to procreate. Right? God did not create the world to be chaos and empty, but rather to be settled. So everyone has an obligation to have children. So what are you going to do with this guy? You didn't help him. Rather, the Bet Din will force the remaining owner to free his slave, and we write him a bill that says he owes you half of his value that he has to pay back. So really, he has to set him free. Therefore, and after Hillel heard that, he said, "You're right. That your solution is better. I changed my mind." Okay, so back to our cases when the Mishnah said that you can't do either one, right? He cannot eat from. The Mishnah said that here the Braita we'll start with first. He cannot meet his own, and he cannot eat of his masters. That was the early stage of Hillel, where he's not in charge of himself. He can't do either. Just like he can't marry a free person or a slave. He's one day this, one day that. So he can't eat his masters because master doesn't want his free half to, and his free half can't do it because half of him is bound to his master. So he's stuck. That's the Braita, is the early source. But the Mishnah, which says he cannot eat from his master, that means he can eat of his own. That's talking about Hillel's last opinion, because once the Bet Din forces the owner to free him, then he is considered free. And therefore, right, even if he didn't do it yet, it doesn't matter, right? He has the status of being free. He's under his own authority, and therefore he can have his own Korban Pesach. All right, now we get to the next Mishnah. Ha'omer la'abdo, se ushchot alai et ha'pesach. Okay, so someone sends a servant, go and make the Korban Pesach for me. So we know Korban Pesach can be made from a lamb or a goat. Now, let's say he didn't specify which one he wants. So shachat gedi yochal. If he use the goat, that's fine. He can eat it. It's kosher. Shachat taleh yochal. If he slaughtered a sheep, a lamb, that's also fine, right? It's a valid korban, and he can eat it. Shachat gedi vetaleh yochal min harishon. Let's say the slave, he wasn't sure, so he did both. Oh, then he picked the first one. The first one that he did, we assume that will be the valid Korban Pesach. And the second one, we just brought an extra thing, so that's not valid, and you have to burn that one. So he eats the first. Good. Shachach ma amar lo. Okay, the first case is that the owner did not specify. So the servant, out of abundance of caution, just did both. Okay, but really only one is needed. Shachach ma amar lo rabo kesad yaseh. What if the owner did specify? He said, I like lamb chops better. But by the time the servant went to buy the animal, he forgot what the master says. So yishchat taleh ugedi ve'omad. Im gedi amar li rabbi gedi shelo v'taleh sheli. Im taleh amar li rabbi taleh shelo gedi sheli. All he has to do is make a condition and say he buys one of each, and he says, if the master told me a goat, then the goat will be his and the lamb will be mine. If he told me a lamb, then the lamb will be his and the goat will be mine. He's making two anyway. He's going to make one for himself. All right, good. So that's a good solution. Shachach rabo. What if the master also forgot? The master said, I like lamb or whatever, and now he forgot what he said. And now they're sitting there, I don't know what we said. In that case, if the servant goes and does both have to be burnt because we don't know. Let's say he comes back from this case, right? He says, okay, I made this condition. Yeah, but I don't remember what I told you. So then you have to burn both because maybe I said this one, maybe I said that one. And so I can't eat from one that I did not designate. So they both have to be burnt. Yet they do not have to do Pesach Sheni because it was a valid Korban Pesach. In other words, they did zirika, right? They did shechita zirika. The process was done in a valid way. Just I don't know which one is mine, so I can't eat either one. But they're both valid Korban Pesachs. All right. Now the Gemara will ask now. Peshita, that first case, isn't this obvious, right? If I told him to go do a Korban Pesach and he didn't do it, I didn't tell him which one, so he can pick one, right? Of course he can pick one. What do I have to tell him? I have to tell him what color I like it, and what's the difference? Pishita shachat gedi yochal af al gav de ragil bataleh. The chidush is even though usually he likes the lamb better, and now the servant went and got a goat. Nevertheless, even though usually most years he always likes lamb, he didn't specify, so it's okay. Shachat taleh yochal af al gav de ragil begedi. If he went and slaughtered a lamb, it's okay. Also, the opposite way, even though he usually has a goat, it's all good. Okay, next clause, shahat gedi v'taleh yochal min harishon. If the servant ended up doing both, you got to pick the first one. Question: This doesn't work. You can't register for two different korbanei Pesach at once. And the truth is that probably the owner prefers one. Let's say he prefers lamb chops. And he went and he did both, but he did the goat first. So since he did both, the owner is probably going to have in mind the lamb as the one I really would have wanted. And so he can't apply for the lamb and the goat also. So really it's only going to be the lamb because that's what he usually likes. See, if you do only one, okay, fine, he'll agree, only that one. But if you do both, then it's not necessarily going to work for both, and maybe he likes the second one better. You can't assume that he likes the first one. So how does this case work? So we limit the case. We say it's not talking about a regular person, matnitin bemelech umalka. We're talking about a king and queen who go and send a servant. Why a king and queen? Usually we think a king is more particular, and if you come back with the wrong thing, off with your head. But actually, according to Rashi, explains it that a king and a queen are not particular because they have lots of food, right? They have the best, any food that they want is available to them. So if their Korban Pesach is a goat and they prefer lamb chops a little better, it's okay. So they'll have one kizayit of that, right? And then they'll eat anything else that they want. So really, king and queen have no preference which animal, and that's why their first one, whichever one is first, that will be okay. And we have a proof for this. Vatanya, right here. This is not vehab with the but indeed this is true. We can't designate two korbans at once. There was once a king and a queen who told their servants, go and do korban pesach for us. They didn't specify. And so the servants did two animals. They asked the king, which one do you want to have? You want the lamb? You want the goat? He said, ask the queen. See, smart king. They asked the queen. She said, go ask the rabbi. Okay, smart queen, right? And so they went and asked Rabban Gamaliel. This is probably Rabban Gamaliel Hazaken, right, who lived during the time of the Bet HaMikdash. So they went and asked him. A king and queen, their mind is light, meaning in a good way, that they're not particular about what they want. They can easily be swayed, convinced. This is fine. That's all good. So since they're easygoing, so they eat from the first, because whichever you did first, they would be fine with. Whereas we can't afford so much food, so we're more particular about the one that we want. So therefore, it's not clear if we would have wanted the first or the second, so we cannot eat either. Okay, this phrase "da'atan kala alehen" is famous from Nashim da'atan kalot. Women are light of mind. Over here, it's actually kind of a nice thing about them that they're not particular, right? They're easy to get along with. But when it comes to Nashim, for example, not being witnesses, it would mean something like they're easily swayable, persuadable, and so that would not be a good quality for witnesses. Okay. Now, Veshu Pa'am Achat Nimset HaLita'a Bebet HaMitbahayim. But there's another interpretation here that besides Rashi, for example, Rambam says no, that this is actually special leniency because they were king and queen, and we don't want to insult the king and the queen, by saying, oh, neither are good. They're gonna, it's not good. You want to have good relationship with the political authorities, and so Datan Kalalen might mean that they're not going to really understand the nitty gritty ins and outs of why this is not good. So we gotta be lenient for them. So that would be a different interpretation of Datan Kala Lehen, that they're not going to accept or understand the legal reasonings. All right. So that's one story, and that proves that for a king and queen, it's okay, but not for a regular person if you did two on their behalf. Another similar story about a king and queen, that one time there was a lizard found in the royal kitchen. And And they said, you know what? Oh, the lizard is one of the 8 creepy crawlies. If it is found dead, then it will make everything tameh. And this is again during the time of the Bet HaMikdash, and they would have wanted to eat everything betahara all the time, and maybe this was a special korban too. So anyway, they were going to say everything's tameh. The king, what should we do? Should we say everything is tameh now? He said, don't ask me, ask my wife. Okay, smart king. She said, go ask the rabbi. The items that you're cooking in the kitchen, are they hot or cold? They're hot. So go pour some cold water on the lizard. They poured cold on it and it quivered. So they said, oh, see, it's still alive. A live lizard does not cause tum'ah. So, I mean, lizards are cold-blooded, so they can survive in a lot of different temperatures, but, not boiling hot. But so since when they did cool it down, it was able to move a little. So, Kula, and Ban Gamliel saved the day for them and said everything is tahor. Good. So you see from this case, well, look, if something is very hot and you pour cold water on it, it might move around a little anyway, even if it's dead. So I wonder if the Ban Gamliel is like, well, listen, we can't, any kula, even if a safek, we gotta make the king and queen happy. Otherwise we'll be on their bad side, and that would not be a good thing. So based on that reading, you can say also here that like Rambam's reading, that this was a special dispensation to make sure that the political authorities were favorable. נמצא מלך תלוי במלכה, נמצאת מלכה תלויה ברבן גמליאל, נמצאת כל הסעודה תלויה ברבן גמליאל. It's just a nice way of summarizing it, that the king depends on the queen, and the queen is dependent on Rabban Gamliel. So you see, the whole meal depends on Rabban Gamliel. Okay, this is nice to show the authority of the Nasi. Okay, now who were these king and queen? We actually know who they are. If this is a Rabban Gamliel the first, who lived during the time of the Bet HaMikdash, around the year 40 CE, there was a king named Agrippa the first. He was the grandson of Herod the Great, and his grandmother was Mariamne, the last of the Hasmonean queens. So he was royalty, and he was the king of Judea and surrounding areas. He had a lot of power. He was actually friendly with the Roman emperor Caligula, which is tells you something about him. Actually, he used that power for good when Caligula wanted to make a pogrom, first in Alexandria, and then Caligula set up a statue of himself in front of the Bet HaMikdash, and there was going to be a huge riot. So Agrippa used his good relations since he was a kid. He knew him, and he used that to get Caligula to back off, at least temporarily, until he changed his mind and was going to put the statue back up and cause a whole riot until Caligula died, luckily. So that's Agrippa, who was very, very important, politically connected. And what you see from this story and from other sources like in Josephus is that Agrippa and his wife, her name was Cypros, were in fact devoted, observant Jews who had also had a good relationship with the rabbis. So these, now we understand the context of these stories. All right, fantastic stories. And we'll just do a little bit of the next section. Shachach ma she'amar lo rabbo. He forgot, the servant goes, he forgot what the master said. So then he does two, and he says, if he said goat, then he'll still be the goat, and mine will be the sheep. If the other way around, fine. Now the Gemara asks, Sheli, the servant says, the other one will be for me. What do you mean for me? Whatever a servant acquires, the owner also acquires. So it's impossible. He can't have something that's his own that wouldn't belong to the master. If a servant finds a watch, right, it automatically belongs to the owner, his owner. So here's what you do. You go to a shepherd that the master knows and he trusts, and he wants to help find a solution for the master. He says, here, I'll give you a sheep on condition that your master does not own the goat, or the other way around. I'm going to give you one on condition that your master does not own the other. In that case, when you make a specific condition that the master won't own it, then the servant can in fact own it. And so that's how it would work. Shachach rabo ma she'amar lo. Now, what if even the master forgot what he said? So we have two animals there. Master's like, I got a goat, a sheep. What did I say? I forgot what I told you. So then both of them are valid, but you cannot eat either of them. So you got to burn both of them, but they don't have to do Pesach Sheni. אמר אביי, לא שנו אלא ששכח אחר זריקה, דבידנה דזריק דם, הווה חזי לאכילה. So this law dispensation that you don't have to do Pesach Sheni is only limited when he forgot which one he picked after the sprinkling of the blood. So at the time of the sprinkling of the blood, he knew the sheep will be mine, the goat will be yours. So then the sprinkling is fine. That's why it's valid. Good. That's why he doesn't have to do Pesach Sheni. After he did sprinkle the blood, then he forgot. Well, that's the time of eating, so that's why he can't eat it. But that's not so important. Still valid. אבל שכח לפני זריקה, דכי זריק דם להווה חזה לאכילה, חייבים לעשות פסח שני. But if he forgot which one he designated and which one was served for a servant, and he forgot that before the sprinkling, so at the time of sprinkling, no one could eat it. And so therefore, it was an invalid Korban Pesach. In that case, you have to burn them both, and they both have to do Pesach Sheni, because they're both invalid. Okay, so Abaye is a little bit more machmir by limiting the Pesach Sheni dispensation. Now, this statement of Abaye, Ika de matnela abaraita. Some people say that he did not say this regarding the Mishnah, but rather he said the same words, but his object of clarification was actually a baraita. These are always fascinating. It means that they remembered the words of Abaye, lo shanu, right? But by themselves. But sometimes they didn't remember to what did Abaye say. What did Abaye say it about? And so it can be applied also to another baraita with a difference in halacha l'maaseh. Chamisha shenit arbu orot pischem ze bazeh. The hides of 5 animals got mixed up one with the other. Right, the hide of the Korban Pesach, the owner keeps, but they're not eating it. Doesn't matter. Anybody could have the hide. So they have all the hides there. They got mixed up, but everybody's going home with one hide. But then, and they look on one of the hides and they find a wart. A wart is a blemish, and that means that Korban Pesach, whichever meat that hide belonged to, is invalid. In that case, you have to take all of their lambs and burn them, because we don't know which one had the blemish, so they're all no good. Nevertheless, they do not have to do Pesach Sheni. So they are all invalid, but they are all valid. Well, tomorrow we'll discuss why. What do you mean they're all valid? Right? One of them had a blemish. Okay, Amar Abaye says about that. Oh, this is only talking about. Actually, Abaye answers this question. This is only true that they don't have to do Pesach Sheni if they got mixed up after the time of Zerika. Because at the time that they did do it, that they sprinkled the blood, they all could eat theirs except for the one that had the wart on it. So it actually doesn't explain that. One guy still is a problem. So in that case, anyway, in that case, none of them have to do Pesach Sheni. If they got mixed up before they did the sprinkling, then for sure one of them was in doubt and was blemished, and therefore we don't know which one. So they all have to do Pesach Sheni. They're all considered invalid. Okay, good. So that Abaye here limits this baraita and says this baraita is actually more stringent than we thought. Now there's a difference. The opinion that said he's talking about the Mishnah would for sure apply it to the Baraita, because in the Mishnah it was only a problem with the person that wasn't clear if it was his or not. But the animal itself, there was nothing wrong with the animal. So if in the case of where something wrong with the person, and yet he says they're both valid, then for sure in the case of the kol sheken baraita, then for sure in the case of the baraita, they would be patur from. It would be more limited, And if it became known after Zirika, then there would be Chayavin and Pesach Sheni. However, the other way around, the one who limits the Braita says that Abayim was limiting the Braita and says after Zirika, yes, Pesach Sheni, Ava Matnitin La. But he might agree that in the Mishnah, not so. Given the Kesherini, since in the Mishnah, the animals themselves are kosher. Right? And it's just a matter of which one was which. And if let's say he would remember, oh yeah, I told you lamb, then you would be able to eat. Right? So in heaven, they know which one it is. So even after the sprinkling, they really are both valid. And so in that case, it would be easy to say that whether before or after the sprinkling, he does not, he can, they don't have to, it's okay, they're valid, they don't have to bring Pesach Sheni. And so that concludes this discussion for now. Tomorrow we'll go back and try to clarify the case of the blemish, why they don't all have to bring a Pesach Sheni, because after all, one of them was in fact invalid. Baruch Adonai Olam, Amen ve'amen.